We've got tile drafting. We have a rondel spinning around as we go. Check us out for these planets we are discovering on Planet Unknown. Welcome back to Talking Cardboard, a YouTube board gaming channel. If you like our content, click the like button below, subscribe, leave a comment. We love interacting. On my right, as per usual, we've got John. I'm Church, and on my left is Corey. And in this episode, we're reviewing Planet Unknown. Corey, how did you hear about this game?
I was selling a game on either Craigslist or Marketplace or something like that, and I stumbled across one of the game's designers and sold him one or two of my games, and he had mentioned that him and a buddy of his were designing a game, and we ended up actually checking it out online in 2020 when they had put it on Tabletop Simulator. But just kind of a funny story where we just stumbled across the designer of the game, we got to talking about it a little bit, and yeah, that's how I first heard about it.
Right.
So.
And speaking of which, the designer of this game, they are from Minnesota, so big shout out to another Minnesota company that's doing well in the board game space.
Yeah, this was a fun game that we did first learn online in the before, actually it was in the during times, that we were able to get together, meet with the publisher, and kind of play through a little bit. And once we actually are now able to get the game to the table, it's got a really nice board presence. Yeah. John, can you go into explaining the basic mechanisms of Planet Unknown and kind of how a game looks?
Yeah, it's a little more simple than it looks. Essentially, it's a tile placement game at heart. The quirk with this is that on your turn, you're actually spinning this Lazy Susan, and each player is then locked into picking one of two pieces from the bay that is locked to their player token. You would then have a player mat of a planet in front of each player. That's either the standard planet or a unique planet, and you're just placing these tiles onto there. You're matching up, water, rover pieces, energy. You're just putting these tiles down, moves you up on the track corresponding to the color of your tile. The tracks then either give you victory points or also trigger a bonus actions based on the color track. There's some cool, unique things like meteors that are dropping onto your planet that you have to clean up with your rovers. You get bonus points for doing that. There's some life pods that you're trying to rescue before you place a terraform piece over that spot, because otherwise the life pod gets crushed and is out for the whole game. Those give you extra points. The main scoring mechanism of this is filling up the rows and columns on the planet. So everything's broken down into a grid space for the tiles. But yeah, that's the game in a nutshell.
So you're trying to fit these polyomino Tetris-style pieces onto your planet as you're cultivating it with different resources. Depending on your game mechanics, there's a lot of different win conditions you can have, a lot of kind of side quests type of things. There's a lot of layers for ways you can be scoring points, but that main mechanism is, can you be filling up your rows or columns in your planet to score the maximum amount of points?
Yeah, and even though that is a main mechanism, I would say that's probably not my most fun I have with the game or my biggest pros. I would think at first glance the Lazy Susan might seem like a gimmick, but I think that's a really fun, unique twist to mechanisms. You never see that, and it's just really cool how you're not only deciding what you want, but also giving others their options at what tiles they're going to get. So that's a very cool mechanism. And the other thing I really like is how combo-tastic the tracks are with each of the different types.
Yes.
Everything feels like if I do this, then I can do that, and I did that, so then I can go up this track, and everything feels like a big combo in this game.
And I want to go back to one of Corey's pros with that rondel and how you're not just setting it for yourself, but others. But as you play the game, you have a objective between each of your neighboring opponents, and you're fighting over that objective. And usually it's something like have the most rover spaces or have the least biological terraforming spaces. And when you're moving that rondel, you might just be like, okay, I've gotten a few of the green spaces. I need to give my neighbor some. So you're trying to figure out, okay, what part of that rondel has a piece that no matter what, one of those two pieces, they're both going to have the green on it, so they're going to have to take it. And I think that's a really interesting part of this, that there is player interaction. It's not just, I'm picking my piece, I'm going to play it. That's going to maybe that's still the best move on some of your turns, but you do have the option of like, yeah, these pieces suck. Screw you. I don't even care what I'm getting. It's just, I know I'm hurting your strategy.
Well, and it's different than a tile drafting game like Queen Domino, where you have the four options and everybody is sequentially choosing one, and you're just picking your best or boxing somebody out a little bit. This, it's you are crafting what everybody has access to.
Right.
And you have different ways that you're interacting with the person on your left to the person on your right. So it's not always you picking the best for you straight up. It's trying to maximize your gain and maximizing the loss of the two people on either side. It is a really creative and not necessarily mind-bending, but it really gets you to think on your plays and how your pieces are all going to fit together that you're acquiring.
And the game is not convoluted in any way. It's very streamlined. Obviously, the player interaction, there is some there, but it's just very focused, a very focused player interaction. You can see exactly what's between both of you and your neighbors on what they're going for, what you're going for, and you can have a couple main focused goals throughout the game to focus on, and it's not just so much going on that you can't keep track of everything. So I like that part of the game.
And this game does a really good job of having two levels to it. Like the first level where everybody has the same planet and there aren't the side quests or ways to get your individual points up, where it's, I'm not going to say it's vanilla, but it's very straightforward and uniform, so you can learn the game, and there's still plenty of player-to-player interaction, plenty of different avenues you can take. But if you want to go for that more customizable side, so you're turning the player mats over and you've got different planets, you have the different companies that have their own ways of scoring victory points or their own number of rovers they start with or things like that, their own tracks for the different resources. It becomes a much more complex game, but it doesn't take away from the level 1 version of this game. I think both are really well done, and they're both enjoyable yet different experiences. That's one of my big pros in playing this game the couple of times that we were able to run through it.
And the tracks and the companies aren't the only thing that you can make asymmetric. The planets can become asymmetric also. So you can kind of mix and match. You can do an asymmetric planet with a basic company, or asymmetric company with a basic planet, or you can just add both in the kitchen sink all together, and it makes for a different experience every time. So the game is very customizable with the difficulty or the strategic level that you want it to be, with either newer players or more experienced players, or really whatever direction you want to take the game in. And I don't think even at the most complex level, I don't think the complexity still is that high.
And I do want to clarify, because that's one of my bigger pros, is that asymmetric nature of both the planets and the companies, like you had stated. But I do want to say, like, the planets themselves, they still follow that same grid delineation. However, the art is changed up on every planet, and each planet is given like a special rule. So it's either constricting the way you play or providing a benefit if you go down a certain avenue. And that's what's really cool and unique about the planets. And then the companies actually do get a little goofy at times, because with the companies you're like getting something that gives you 4 rovers to start with, or 1 rover, and you know, it's again either constricting or fine-tuning that play style that you're going for just based on what your starting elements are. And then one of the cool things about the companies is one of the boards actually has one of your track markers jumping around to the other tracks.
Yeah.
And that happens nowhere else. And it's like, okay, this is something unique that gives this its own flavor. And it's something that only you have to think about, but it could really change your whole strategy. I mean, it's very unique.
Yes, a lot of replayability, because there are so many different ways this could go, and that leads into one of my biggest pros, is the table presence of this game. Like there's the different colored cubes that are marking are just, they're nice, the kind of translucent colors. The boards that you're going up each of the tracks are really well done. It's very clear, it's very colorful. The rondelle in the middle, all the pieces, the Tetris style pieces are, it's really
meteorites and life pods.
Yeah, exactly. The 3-dimensional life pods where you can be like putting meteors on them, because I think one time had where you had to be delivering the meteors to a certain stations. Just great, excellent table presence.
And all the tracks are dual layered boards also, so the cubes fit in there all nicely, and things don't get shifted around very easily. A very, very nice production that you can tell they did not skimp on the components at all. It definitely looks like a very well expensive produced game.
Yes.
So you definitely get your money's worth with it too. I don't remember the exact cost of it right now, but I feel like for the product you get for the price, it's very well done.
And just because it's got a lot of components, it's got a really big table presence, doesn't mean it's a complex game. We've had other games that are a similarly large size box. No, John isn't getting smaller. This is a larger box, but it doesn't mean that the game took too long or it was too complex. I think we played this first couple of times in like an hour and a half each time.
Right.
Yeah, and the second time was because we were each learning the interactions of our own unique company and our own planet. And I think I had one where what my company was really good at doing, my planet couldn't do because it had an asteroid belt around the center of it. But it's, learning that, and it didn't feel like a chore, and the game didn't go too long.
Yeah, and on top of that, another pro or maybe something I'm neutral on, but this plays up to 6 players. But the end conditions are the end game's triggered when a Bay of the Rondel runs out of tokens. And regardless if you're playing 4, 2, or 6 players, that's kind of just going to trigger at the same time anyway, because only one tile is being taken out of a Bay at a time.
Yep.
You're all playing your piece, at the same time, so you're not really waiting around. So whether you're playing by yourself or 6 people, theoretically the time to play this game should always be about the same.
Yeah.
Do we have any cons that you can think of?
I think going from the level 1 version to the level 2 version, it did take a lot of time to try to get a better sense of. I remember one time that we were playing one of my tracks, I think it was for my water. It was only like 4 slots, and you could just be moving it up further up the slot, and then you had to figure out, well, do I actually want to go to the highest version of this or the lowest? So it took some recalibration for what I learned as a fun game, a fun interactive kind of player interacting game, to then, oh man, I really need to interact with my company now. Oh, but my planet can't let me do that, and oh, but Blake's planet's gonna make him do that, so I got to figure out this and that. It ramped it up a lot.
Right.
I don't think it was a con. It took a lot of time to recalibrate when we started playing that more difficult, nuanced version of it. So just be prepared. If you start out playing where the player boards and the companies are the same, and then you go for more of a challenge, it will kind of hit you early. Yep. But then once you get it is, like I said, it's a different game. It's not better or worse. It's a slightly different game, and it's a really enriching experience no matter what. So you learn, and then you really are able to enjoy it from there. But that's kind of what I would suggest is a little bit of a con, is it really does ramp things up a lot. John, do you have any cons?
I think my only con would be kind of in the same vein as what you were saying. You do pop out those asymmetrical boards, and the rules of the game are pretty straightforward. There's a few things we messed up the first time we played, like the energy grids and how those function. However, we realized when we went to the asymmetric side, like, oh, this doesn't really make sense. We looked into that, and it's like, oh, well, we played it wrong the first time, so now this board makes sense. But the asymmetrical nature, and I think this is in every game, just makes it a little harder to be super clear on exactly what the special ability is at times and how that's supposed to work. But I think overall, that's a pretty minor gripe. So
Yeah, and another minor gripe too, that some people might fall into thinking that if you play the game more often, they're going to do better because they're playing at a higher level. They're playing. There is multiple levels to the game, multiple strategies that you can keep track of. And if you're new to the game, you might just be more focused on what your company is good at or what your board is good at comboing or doing things on your own. Whereas somebody with more of a multi-layered approach to this might think of what tiles they're giving their opponents and what tiles they're taking when. And there definitely are those layers for that, whether the other players like it or not.
And I think because we haven't done all the possible combinations, because there's a lot between your company and your planet, but it feels like that there might be some random combinations that could come out where what the planet is, the natural existence of the planet kind of counteracts what your company is striving to do, or what in some instances what it can or can't do, and then that might lead to somebody feeling bad. Easiest thing you can do is just give them another option for it if it looks like it's going to be too restricting. And we haven't come across anything that was like breaking a player's game experience.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is not only do the companies and planets maybe have a combo that interacts poorly, but the shared objective cards. Like I know the planet or company I got had 4 rovers at my disposal, and I got bonus points for collecting meteorites and delivering them to my depots.
Right.
But one of my neighboring objectives was have the fewest amount of rover tiles. So, I mean, I wouldn't... Again, this is probably a minor gripe. That felt bad because I essentially was straight up just, okay, that objective means nothing to me now. But it still meant I had to get forced into a strategy, and I played that strategy regardless of whether that objective was going to be something I was going to try to accomplish. So
Sure, and so that can kind of be a feels bad, but none of those victory or end game conditions were worth too many victory points.
Right.
So it wasn't game breaking, but it did kind of force you to switch your strategy. Like either I'm going to try to thread this really difficult needle, or I'm going to forsake it and just go all out trying to do my thing the best that I can. And that's randomly going to happen. There's a non-zero chance of that, so you kind of deal with it. But yeah, with so many possible variables that go into it, there could be instances where you kind of get boxed in or boxed out of playing the maximum game.
Yeah. Yep.
But, you know, that can happen in pretty much any type of game, so it's not necessarily anything the game does wrong or anything that we did incorrectly. It's just these certain variables lining up a very specific way.
Yep.
Corey, what type of gamer do you think would really enjoy having this in their collection?
I really think this could appeal to pretty much any type of gamer. I think it can appeal to beginning gamers, more advanced gamers. It's definitely one of those games that is geared toward being customizable for the experience you're looking for. And also, it is tile placement. It's a simpler version of tile placement. You're just going up on tracks based on the colors of the tiles you're placing. It's a very easy game to describe to people, explain the rules to people, and a very easy game to play if you want it to be. But also, it's going to have that mainstay or that longer term burn in your collection, or I guess I don't really know how to say it, but it's gonna stay in your collection for a longer period of time because of the ability to ramp it up for when you're looking for a deeper game.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't even think we've played all the variant modules yet.
No, not at all.
I know there were secret missions we never added. I think there were more like community missions, but yeah, we've probably scratched maybe 50% of what this game has to offer through the times we've played it. So I think that's awesome.
And I think this is a really good game for somebody who likes to host game night, where they want to have a wide library of games that people could choose from, because the mechanisms this game has in terms of the rondel, in terms of the tile drafting, and then you're kind of working against the side missions of the people directly adjacent to you. That would be fun to really introduce new people to, someone who are casual gamers or somebody who wants to jump in. Because the theme, there is good theme to it, but it's not overbearing theme where it would turn people off or really be a central mechanic of what's going on. John, lead us off with your final rating for Planet Unknown.
Really torn on this one because I really, really like this game, but I also still like Queen Domino more. So I think I'm going to give this a 9, which may still be a little high, but it's in the ballpark. I really like this game. The few qualms I have about it, detract a little bit, but overall I think this is a really fun game. I like tile placement. I like the fact that I can now kind of manipulate what my opponents are getting through the rondel system and you know, the uniqueness that comes with that. So yeah, I'm going to go with a 9. I would definitely always bring or suggest this game.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to go with an 8. I really like the same mechanisms that you talk about, the rondel of tile drafting kind of, and then boxing other people into their decisions, having side missions that you're like interacting with the people on your right and left. I love player-to-player interaction. This game, when it's trying to figure out how your company and planet interact together, was a lot for me. And I know that I was the last player to act every time we'd be playing, trying to figure out the tile, where it should go, how to maximize all this and that. So the game slowed down for me in kind of a negative sense. I still love this game. I like when we bring it to the table. I think it's got great table presence. Artistically, it's really fun. But that's not one of, like, I would say is my top 10 games of all time, because it will take me personally longer to really get locked into what my strategy is going to be. But once I do, it's a really fun game.
Yeah. For me, this is really an upper echelon tile placement game. It's not just because the publisher, the designers are from Minnesota, which that doesn't hurt either, but it really is that upper tier tile placement that really anybody can enjoy. You could just pull it out in the base game and just have fun with it. You don't ever have to play with the advanced strategy boards or companies and still have a great time with it. I'm going to give this game a 9 out of 10, just like John. It really is one of my favorite tile placement games. Queen Domino's up there as well. I don't remember what kind of rating I gave that, but this is, like John said too, different enough to where you could have this side by side, I believe, on the shelf next to one another and still have a different enough option for tile placement. You know, Queen Domino definitely does feel a lot different than this. The Lazy Susan is not a gimmick. It really is a quintessential part of the gameplay. It matters. It really does. And I think it adds just enough strategy to the core gameplay for the basic version of the game that I think will keep the base game fresh, whether or not you use those advanced options. So for all of those different variabilities and different things in the game and just the strategic options that it presents, all in the meanwhile keeping it simple enough and streamlined enough to really at the basic level, you're just advancing up on these tracks to try to create combos with the different colors. I really think the entire package presents itself well and is really, really fun, and I would recommend it to almost anybody.
Overall, it sounds like we really enjoyed our experience. We love playing this game. We love that it is a local publisher, Adam's Apple Games from Minnesota. So from all of us here at Talking Cardboard, go discover your own planet.